I'm Rob Skinner, and this is the Rob Skinner podcast. Today, I'm talking to Jordan and Caryn McLeod. They've been missionaries. They've been missionaries to the Holy Land, and I look forward to talking to them. All this and more on the Rob Skinner podcast. Welcome back to the Rob Skinner podcast. My goal is to inspire you to live a no regrets life, make this life count, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. Jordan and Caryn, welcome to the program.
Hi, welcome. Thanks for inviting us. This is great.
Absolutely. I am so happy to have you on the program. I met your daughter, Eden, in Eastern Europe, actually in Bulgaria. We took a trip out there to visit the Revive EE program. Eden was one of the first people I met. She is just a fireball. And I was so impressed with her passion for the mission. She keeps re-upping there in Revive EE and just keeps preaching the word in multiple countries. And I loved her attitude. Just felt like it was total kindred spirit. Then I met your other daughter, another of your daughters, Leela, here in Boston. And Leela also has that same spirit of, fight. I didn't piece it together until she said, hey, I think you know my sister. And so I'm like, oh, that's your sister. She goes, yeah. And then Leela said, hey, you got to talk to my parents. They've got a story to tell. They're amazing missionaries. And anytime a kid like brags about their parents like that, I'm like, wow, I really need to talk to these parents, because you don't run into that very often, where the kids are really touting their parents. So that's how we made this connection. This is our first time getting to know each other, but I'm really looking forward to it. How'd you guys become Christians?
So for me, I was 20, probably 21 or 22 in New York City. I transferred schools. I went to FIT and I was doing a 1 year program to become a fashion designer. And in that year, it was crazy working, living across in the dorms and working all night long. And I ended up having a boyfriend in that school, and he started to study the Bible and started to share it with me. And it was very interesting to see his enthusiasm. But I come from a Jewish family, mother, father. I had my bat mitzvah. I was traditionally Jewish, and that Christianity was sort of a taboo topic. So I listened. I said, I'm really glad that you're enjoying that. And sure, you can tell me more about it. And we ended up, you know, time happened, things happened. We ended up breaking apart, but I would run into him and I saw the influence of the Christians. He would always be around other Christians and they'd be inviting me to things. And one of the girls that led into my life, and I had a growing curiosity. And so I wanted to know educationally why he got all inspired all of a sudden. So I met with her one on one, and she would start to help me with the Bible. And I remember asking my best friend from growing up, who was Catholic, to come over with her Bible, and it was impossible for me to read. So my curiosity was growing. Yeah, it was like, I don't even know where to start. So we started in I didn't know the New Testament. I didn't even know the Old Testament. So that was interesting.
So were you
And
like were you like a non-religious Jewish person, or were you went through a bat mitzvah, so there was some education there?
yeah, so I was so in Judaism, there's Orthodox, there's conservative, and there's Reformed. And I was
Okay.
what you would call Reformed. Reformed is like you're less observant, but you still keep the holidays and the traditions. We didn't light candles on Saturdays. However, that was something that was always in my heart, a little bit of wanting to do a little more of that. And I remember I went to my Hebrew school. I remember talking to my family about it, but we were Reformed. We were not moving into that conservative slot. I considered myself Jewish. It was part of my identity. In school, it was like I was the Jewish girl. There wasn't, even though grew up in New York, I didn't grow up on the heavily Jewish side. I grew up on the side where it was the holiday, I would raise my hand and tell the class about how we practice this holiday or whatever. So it really was kind of part of my identity, and so I wasn't really intending to go into Christianity, but I was curious. So I started studying. But I was also super skeptical and super mistrusting. So I didn't really let the girls into my life, into my heart. I didn't want them to know about the relationship that I had with the ex boyfriend because that was a whole community dynamic going on. I was just sort of, and I only went to the Bible talk because it was outside because I could run away. No one was, that was sincerely my reasoning. Like, okay, it's an outdoor thing. All right, I can sit on the step and listen. But I still remember the conversation in that first Bible talk. And it left an impression on me. And so I started to study the Bible and this went on for a good part of a year and a half, where I was very curious. I learned to pray, and I had a lot of questions, and I adopted what I could without resistance. So I started to pray, which is something I didn't do in Judaism. I would pray my prayers in Hebrew in synagogue, but I didn't have a personal relationship with God. So this was the start of that, embarking on that. I hit a number of roadblocks, and one of them being my personal belief system in the New Testament and Jesus. Wasn't really buying into that or sure of that or feeling that I needed this man to help me go to God. That was very hard to accept or to even recognize. I had an obstacle of my family members trying to tell them that I was even attending a church or even I had my own resistance to going to church. I felt like the culture of clapping and talking in church is very different than like synagogue, which is very solemn and hymns and prayerful. So there were so many things. But what was appealing was the social aspect of the church. It was very warm. It was very welcoming. I started to build relationships with a few people that I really let in. And I liked the Bible. I liked what I was reading. I even liked the teachings in the New Testament. So I was conflicted, and I went through like I said, it was a good part of over a year of searching, and I ended up the girls challenged me because I would kept putting Judaism as my barrier, and they said, "Well, so then talk to a rabbi, go study with you know a religious rabbi." I said, "Okay, I'll take that challenge," and I ended up finding a rabbi in the Garment Center congregation in Manhattan, and he invited me over for Shabbat dinner. There was another girl in the ministry who was also from a Jewish background, so she came with me, and I really wanted them to have a confrontation and figure it out. They would figure it out, and I would watch. But through my prayer life with God, it didn't happen that way. Everyone was very amicable. Everybody was very nice. The rabbi was trying to connect us socially, me and my girlfriend with his son and another young. And I realized, oh, this is my decision. This is really really that this is no one's going to figure this out for me, but I have to be willing to take steps that are scary, even if I believe it, even cross those lines. So it was a really big character building time for me, putting boundaries with family members. I mean, and saying this is what I'm pursuing and this is what I'm interested in. And also my pride, my own personal pride realizing, "Oh, wow, I need help." I didn't see my sin. I wasn't aware, but some of that was my sin, and even in that moment, my sin of pride. So, yeah, it was a process. It was a process. I had lots of good support that, like, loved me and held on to me and in friendship and in truth, and I feel like I did not make one big decision. It was like a series of small decisions that I finally said, "Okay, yeah, I need to get baptized, 3 in the morning." I, like, turned that over one day.
Wow. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. And how
Yeah.
about you, Jordan?
When I was at the age of 13, I started using drugs. So from the age of 13 to the age of 17, I became a pretty uh, full blown drug addict very early. And during that time, I started reading the Bible, but I would only read like the satanic, evil, end of the world. And I would never read about the light because somewhere I knew I'm not in the light. Like I know I'm not living right. And that stayed with me. The Bible had a huge impact on me, even when I was very wayward. I had a couple of girlfriends who mothers believed in God, and I went to church with them. I also was raised Jewish. So I look a little less Jewish than Karen, but I had a bar mitzvah. My mother was Jewish. My grandmother was Jewish. My grandpa was Jewish. They all came from Hungary and Czechoslovakia as war, immigrants. So they basically, a lot of my family on that side was killed in the Holocaust. So I grew up with uncles and cousins who had tattoos, numbers on their arms, and all her brothers were killed in the concentration camps. And then, so that's the Jewish side. My mother, on a trip to Jamaica, met my father and they got married and they had me. So I'm one of the very, very few, Rob, Jamaicans you're going to meet. There's not too many. Me and I think me and Lenny Kravitz, I think, are like two of the, like in the top 1%. Me and Lenny Kravitz. But and Drake too, I think. But I don't think he's yeah, no, he's not Jamaican, but he is Jewish and black. But anyway, so I basically from the age of 17 stopped using drugs, was evading God. I didn't want to stop all sin yet, but somewhere in me I knew at some point I'm probably going to end up with God. And I was invited to this church like by all these different people over like a 3-year period. I also went to FIT, and that's where we met. That's another
FIT.
Fashion Institute of Technology.
Got
That's
it.
where we
Okay.
met.
Yeah.
And someone had invited me to church, a girl who I knew from high school that I used to make fun of, actually, not a friend. She even had me in her diary as like someone she hated. But then she invited me to church. And I said, these were my words. So I said, I'm very busy. I just started my own business. I said, I'm very busy, but stay on top of me. That's what I told her. So she sent some brothers to study with me, and they were great. I was trying to duck them a lot. I was always missing Bible studies and not showing up or excuses, but they stayed on me. And eventually they wouldn't baptize me because I didn't understand Jesus enough. And that's when I knew this was serious. I thought, they just want me to be part of this club. They want to put me on their list and make me into whatever. This is, I'm not really with this fully. But when they said, you know what, you're not ready, that's when I realized, oh, this is for real. And in 2 weeks, I was baptized after that. And that's
Wow.
36 years ago now.
Wow. Okay. So what year were you guys baptized? You guys were both baptized in the New York City church, I'm assuming.
New York City Church.
What years?
I was 1993.
And I was 91.
Okay. And may I ask how old you guys are?
She won't tell you, but I'm 56, 7.
Okay, you're still in your prime. Okay, good. Okay, fantastic. So you're in your 50s. And then you guys became Christians there. The church was exploding in size. It got planted in 1983. You guys part of the downtown ministry or the daytime ministry?
We were part of the downtown and then what was called at the time the AMP, Arts, Media, and Professionals.
Yeah.
And we were in the
Yes, that was
village. We were part of like the village, artsy. We did cool stuff. We had like 3-story parties with
Yeah.
fashion shows and poetry nights and just we had a blast.
no. I'd hear stories about what was happening in New York City from afar. Is really, really cool. Well, how'd you guys meet each other?
It was a fun time. So going back to FIT, a Fashion Institute of Technology, when my boyfriend was studying the Bible, had kept talking about this Jordan guy who was teaching him. And I said, I don't know. Sometimes he would say something negative about Jordan. Sometimes Jordan said it and it was great. And I didn't know what I thought about Jordan. It turned out, yeah, we ended up breaking apart, as I said. And even while I was studying the Bible, everybody kept referring me to Jordan. Oh, you're Jewish? Talk to Jordan. Oh, you're at fashion school? talk to Jordan. Well, Jordan's, your parents are against you. Jordan's mother comes to church and she's very, she offered herself to have children whose parents are opposed, and everyone I talked to was like, but Jordan. I was like, um, and I had a little bit of an attitude toward Jordan because I don't know, we had a few interactions that rubbed me the wrong way.
We
So,
still do. We still do.
And there, I know what you're talking about. Okay, keep going.
so, So anyway, yeah, but we did have somewhat of as I studied the Bible, people have photos. We did talk before. I only remember through the photos sometimes, but we were caught in some like in-depth conversations and, most likely around Judaism and the Bible and family and fashion and all those things. And so, yeah, eventually I became a Christian and I was praying very much for the old boyfriend to come back because he had fallen away. And every often when I prayed for him, I ran into Jordan in New York City more than once. It happened several times. And I was thinking, weird. Okay. Maybe he's praying for him too, great. And then he asked me on a date, and it was an interesting date. I met all of his family members, and we went to a play and they were cool. I really admired his mother because I would see her going to church and she was sort of a gypsy hippie lady. And I said, oh, I don't know about him, but I like her. She's really cool. And so, yeah, from there we built a friendship. And I didn't realize that this was going anyplace special right away.
And I had heard about her because I was studying the Bible with the man who was dating her. So she was the one pulling him away from God. So
Boy,
it was kind of like the Jezebel, you know?
It was fashion school. So,
And then
well,
I would meet her sometimes and we'd have little interactions. And, I knew she was dating him. I never even considered her because he got baptized. And then I remember she got baptized. I always admired her. I admired her faith. I admired all that she'd gone through to become a Christian. I knew what it took, but I never considered her. She was a young Christian. I was already 5 years a disciple. I thought for sure she'll end up with him. That's fine. And then he fell away and we ended up going on a date. Someone said, hey, why don't you take Karen on a date? And I just kind of did. Like there was no real intention. And then there was like a little something there. And after our second date, which was a really wild, fun, exciting date that we did something called spiritual graffiti. We dressed up, we went through the village, we did all kinds of crazy, fun, spiritual stuff. And I knew that night, oh, this is the one. This is the one.
wow,
No idea, but I was sure on our second date.
we had a good time. I was
that's awesome. So, what year did you guys get married?
90.
90, 95. Okay. Okay. So, if you can just give me a 2-minute overview of your life, where you've been since that time, we're going to come back and kind of drill down into definitely your time in the Holy Land and in Cyprus. But can you just give it like an overview, just in 2 minutes, of where you've been since 95, since you guys got married?
Sure. So we got married in 95. We left on the mission team to Israel in 96. We spent 6.5 years in Jerusalem. So we moved to Cyprus in 2002. And we were in Cyprus for 7 years. We had our 3 daughters in Jerusalem. Our son was born in Cyprus. And we moved back to the States. Ended up in New Jersey, central New Jersey, in 2009. And we've been put in place since, as far as like moving.
And in that 13-year period, we moved 15 times. We lost loved ones. My uncle passed away. Her mother passed away. We started our own business when the church couldn't pay us anymore. We started our own jewelry business, which to this and became self-employed missionaries for quite a while in Cyprus. We've kept that jewelry business till now, which has sustained the family for the last 20 years. A lot happened in that 13-year period.
That's great. Okay, so you've been bivocational for 20 years, last 20 years at least.
We've been here the last 16 in Jersey,
Okay. Okay, great. What town in Jersey? Sorry.
Central Jersey, near Rutgers University. It's like the middle of
Okay. I
Jersey.
had a friend there from there. His name was Dom Munson. I don't know if you knew Dom.
Yeah, we know Dom. We know his brother, Joe and Dom.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, great guy. Okay. So let's go back. Just explain why'd you go to Jerusalem? What led to that? Now, what prompted you? How'd you feel called to go to Jerusalem?
Yeah. Funny enough, I never went on a plane. Like growing up, our family was very like stable, like suburban family. So, but going to people's bat mitzvahs and bar mitzvahs, like you always heard about Israel. And I had a dream and I really believed that it was real to the extent that it was like I remember talking to my family and saying, "I remember we were there and I could see how it looked." And I told them like my brother, like he broke his leg and we were walking over this thing. It was so clear to me, which was bizarre. And so I had it in my heart that I needed to go to Israel. And but again, like I had never been on a plane. I didn't have a passport, like I don't know. And so we would talk about that when we would go on dates and he would talk about how I think he had some jacket. You had like an army, like an Israeli army jacket that he wore or something and it prompted us conversating and he said he had an uncle there and he'd been there before, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go too. I know I need to go there. I just have it in my mind that I've gotta go there."
I think we both were a little honestly bored. We'd been married like a year and a half, and we were just kind of living that domestic life. She had a job, I had a job. We had a nice apartment. I think we were craving just this adventure, just to feel like I want to do something big. I don't
Yeah.
just, that was definitely part of it for me. And I had been there and I have relatives there, and it's amazing there. It's one of the most like incredible countries to visit, let alone live in. And the call went out for Jerusalem from LA. Like they were like, "We're doing the planting. Anyone who's interested, call." And I called up one of the guys. He was leading the team, Henry Kramer, and he liked my voice, he said. And he said, "Look, I said a little. He said, pay off your debt and come out to LA. So we got on a budget. We paid off our debt. We gave up our super inexpensive great home and jobs, and we lived in LA for a month getting ready for the team.
Wow.
Yeah, it all happened very fast. We finished a year of marriage, and then that was our plan. Okay, we're gonna go. I don't know what that
That's so
means. We're gonna do.
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, Henry Kramer. He's a doctor. Is that right?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So tell me about the team. How many people were on the team?
I think it was about 17. And you had all
Okay.
of, and it kind of like tapered off. So it started off at like 25, but it was very hard to get visas. You had to figure out how to get a job. I mean, it was very challenging. A lot of people even left like the first month we were there. It was so challenging. They just bailed and went home. Like it was so at the end of the day, it was about 16. It was about,
Were there any disciples living there when you arrived?
no.
No, it's just starting from ground zero, basically. From okay. What was it like? I mean, how did you guys get visas? Did you guys have a special preference because of your ethnic background, or like, tell me a little bit about how did you guys got living visas there, working visas?
We got tourist visas for the first 3 months, and a lot of the brothers and sisters would renew those every 3 months by
Okay.
going to maybe traveling to Jordan or to Egypt, crossing the border, coming back, getting another 3 months. We were fortunate we got jobs, so our bosses got us working visas.
So we were able,
Okay.
yeah, we were able as fashion designers. That was a commodity that they wanted to hire, and so we both got jobs. And the very faith building part was that I studied a very specific niche in fashion, and it was this knitting machine, which was very hand like almost old world. And I found a company that did exactly that over there. So it was like, okay, I was a fit for them, they were a fit for me. It's not America. There's not 101 companies like that. There was one. So it was really neat.
and we got our
Oh, wow.
jobs on the same day. And Henry was like, "Look, if you guys don't get jobs, you got to go home." And we ended up getting a job on the same day. It was super encouraging.
That's amazing. Oh, tell me, what was it like when you landed there in the first day or two? Like, what were your initial impressions just coming back? I mean, okay, you guys are both have Jewish heritage. Here you come back. What were the initial impressions? What was going through your mind?
I remember thinking some of it was like that dream I had, but mostly no. It's like, "Oh, I don't know. This is a whole new world." Yeah, and I don't remember the first day as clear as I do remember those days job seeking and just taking buses, and I don't know the language, and it's hot in certain places, and I've got, like, I'm not dressed for the weather, I don't understand what's going on. Every town has the same street names, and I'm in the wrong town, and I didn't know it, and just like, "Whoa, I'm not in America," you know?
And I remember the first, usually like with a mission team, the first couple of weeks are like touring
True.
and kind of seeing this land. And at the time, Corey Blackwell was the Middle East World Sector leader. And he came out. And I always remember what he said. He said, "Give these people your time, give these people your money." And it was like that always stayed with me. His charge to just leave it on the field, give it everything you have here. And we tore it around and we thought it was, here's a funny story. I think we were the most sent off church in the history of the ICOC. We had like 13 send offs, man. They brought us to San Diego. They sent us off. They brought us to this region because it was so inspiring. Wow, this is the Jerusalem church. They wrote a song for us, and we thought we were going to get there and baptize 3,000, but so that was another thing. It was super challenging. It was super challenging. Nothing worked. First principles, no studies. We had to rewrite everything because nothing we did in America made any sense there.
How do you mean? Tell me about it.
So, like in America, we kind of assume a certain belief in Jesus most of the time, but you're dealing with Jews and Muslims who actively do not believe. So, the first step is to even show them that Jesus was real, or, the moment you mention he's the Son of God to a Muslim, you're out. The moment you mention he's a Messiah to a Jew, you're out. And the New Testament has zero bearing. I mean, it has no validity. So that in and of itself was like, whoa, where do we start?
Right.
And love was the thing that really, when it came down to it, if we could love, because there's not a lot of it there.
Yeah, and I'd say, like, leaning on my own conversion or my own story of coming to faith was helpful, but at the same time, people are more passionate about religion, about, the faith is tied to the country, their religion is tied to the country. Everything is much more hot and tempered. So just, even the words that you use will turn people on or off in a second. So we had to learn a whole new way of communicating and a whole new way of how words sounded and what they meant were a whole different thing. I had learned Hebrew. We had tried to learn Hebrew, like I had learned it, words in a prayer are not the same as communicating to people, and what things meant were just very different. A huge culture change, huge culture shock. Yeah, no, they have what's called ulpans, and they're very good at teaching the language. So we went to Hebrew classes. We were commuting to our jobs once we started working and coming back and taking our classes at night. And so we would use the central bus systems and study. I know I'd study my language in the bus, but I'd practice all day long at work. So I was learning vocabulary on a specific area of vocabulary all day long. But there was so many areas to learn. Yeah.
Like we could say all the words of fashion, like buttons and colors and fabrics. Like those were the first words we learned because we both got fashion jobs.
So, okay, being there, you have to learn the language. It's a completely different method. The methodology of trying to help people become Christians is totally different. How did it go during those 6 years? Did anyone become a Christian? Like what was the impact initially?
And I also want to go back before we go forward to say that it's a divided city. So it's not, you have Jews with their belief. Within Judaism, you've got the religious people versus the more secular. And then you have, you have Arabs and Muslims. So again, relating to each person is so different. It wasn't just one way of operating, just like there is here, but there is very much, you're in a certain area. You dress differently, you speak differently. So that cultural learning.
How did it go? Like in terms of just the church getting off the ground, like in the first 5 years, did the church grow? Did you baptize or what?
So the first person who got baptized was a young man from Bethlehem, I believe. And he was the first guy we baptized. And then the whole town turned against him and pulled him away. His family, the neighborhood, it's a very small place. Everyone knows each other for generations. So once they turned on him, they turned on us. And that guy took a long time to become a Christian. It was super tough. We baptized a few foreigners, like people who were visiting, and we were fasting. I think we fasted for how many years? Was it like a few years? We were fasting, not,
Maybe
we were
3.
fasting sweets until a Jew would become a Christian. And we baptized the first two Jews, I think it was about 3 years after we were there.
And I want to even in walking backwards, I want to clarify, and something that we had to communicate well was that it wasn't about a conversion as much as it was for Jews. It's more about a completion. Judaism promises a Messiah. The Old Testament promises that there will be someone comes to save. And so tripping over those words of converted and, the feeling of I'm leaving who I've become, that was something I did. I had to trip over that. But in fact, in this journey, I got it back where I realized I am a Jew. That is my culture. That is my heritage. And I don't lose that. I actually find the fulfillment of that. And so some of those words are very abrasive and for not any reason except that we've grown the church in a Christian way and not in a sensitive to Judaism way. So, yeah, I know we're talking now and we're back to being Americans, but in the mind frame of where we were at and the reality for Jews, it is a completion.
Like we had church on Saturday in Israel because you work on Sunday. Sunday is the first day of the week. You stop at 5:30 p.m. on Friday and then you go back to work on Sunday. So the weekend is Friday and Saturday. So we would have church on Saturday because that's the only day people are free. So even something as simple as that had to be different. And the
Wow.
Americans would visit and go, "Well, why are you guys having church on Saturday?" And we'd be like, "Man, you have no idea how different this place is."
That's a great way to say it, Karen. Completion rather than conversion. What an awesome thought. That's fantastic. How did you guys keep your faith pumped up? 3 years for the first Jewish conversion or completion. How did you maintain your faith and keep your faith alive, your optimism? Must have been a little dispiriting when I mean you're going from one type of a field that's relatively much more open to a really challenging mission field. What'd you do personally? What changed for you guys to keep your faith alive?
I know that I think praying, being determined, I think that the relationships that we had as a group with one another were super crucial. I didn't realize how important being on a team, that team is your family. That becomes your family now. And I think that was crucial, like our closeness. I just remember like just, gritting. I knew that it took me a long time. So I think that just the essence of for someone to really seek it. It gave me a value too of how precious it is to be able to be a completed Jew, and how maybe rare it is, and how,
Yeah.
I thought 3,000 were gonna, it was gonna be Acts 2 when I got there, but I realized, oh wow, this is really challenging for Jews, and it was for me. And wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
For me, it was like it got to a make or break, like you're either going to get made or you're going to break here. So a lot of I was challenged in my faith. I was challenged to really reconcile some beliefs that I took for granted. Like, how is there one God, but he's got three parts? Like, that's polytheistic. Like, you're getting challenged by the Muslims and the Jews on what you believe. They're showing you scriptures that refute what you believe. So you're kind of like having to dig super deep in your faith and read things you've never read and research things you've never researched. And so, in a sense, your faith is growing. You don't even realize it, but by the nature of having to defend the faith, you grow in faith. And faith is valuable because it's what you're spending your time keeping. So your faith is not just like a secondary thing that you just kind of maintenance. Like your faith is everything. Because if essentially they're right, what are you doing?
Right. Right. Exactly. That's
Yeah.
great. So your mindset going into is you knew this was going to be challenging just based on your personal experience. And then you viewed it rather as a challenge. So like, this is good. This is calling me higher. And so you accepted that challenge. That's great. Why did you leave?
We were, I mean, the major reason was my mom had gotten sick, and it was serious, and I wanted to visit her. We knew that that might pose other problems for us, but when we left, and yeah, it was clearly time to change that chapter, spend some time with the family.
Because your mom was sick?
We knew that by leaving, we might not be able to get back in because we won't talk too much about it just because it's on air, but there were issues with not wanting us in the country because of our faith. So
Got it.
they were able to sort of block us and not allow us to get back in.
Okay. The next place on your journey was Cyprus.
Actually,
Okay. Tell me about that.
the next place was LA. So once we
Okay.
get back into Israel, landed Andy Fleming and his wife Tammy were leading the Middle East now. And we had no home. We were homeless with three kids. Eden was
Mm.
3, and Leela and Tahila, who were twins, were 3 months. And we had no home. We couldn't go back. And we flew back and we were like, where are we going to live? And they said, you can stay in our garage. It was a big garage. And we lived in the Flemings' garage for 6 months. And we're part of the LA church. And it's figuring out what we were going to do next. And we wanted to still be in Israel, but we couldn't be there. And there was an open minister visa in Cyprus. But in Cyprus, there was only 2 brothers left. The whole church had essentially fallen away except for 2. So we got the minister's visa and we took our family, my wife, myself, and the kids, 3 at the time, and we moved to Cyprus to sort of replant the Cyprus church and then have the Israeli brothers and sisters, they could take a boat over and visit us so we could stay connected. So we ended up moving to Cyprus, which was the complete opposite of Israel. Whereas Israel is very aggressive, very intense, just it's a state of war, it's high level of anxiety all the time. Cyprus is like almost like a resort. It's like an island, it's relaxed. It's like everything is it's like, Jamaica in the Middle East.
Actually, a very comforting place to live,
Yeah.
actually. I recommend
So
it.
you kind of connected there with the Jamaican roots there,
So
kind of both sides.
island life, everything is tomorrow, tomorrow. We'll do it tomorrow. Very laid back, very boring compared to Israel. Like there's no buzz, there's nothing going on. I mean, it is a whole different world, but that's where we got to truly raise. I think God was just giving us some time to raise our family and be a family. We were very grateful in retrospect that we didn't go back to Israel.
Must have been a nice change of pace coming out of that high intensity situation.
Yeah, there was definitely a feeling of security and comfort there. We lived by the water and we were also we went from also having a team to being our little family. So that was a chance for us to regroup and change the way we did everything. Change the way we had to now learn and on top of it, we had to now learn the Greek Orthodox culture and religion, which was quite different. So, topographically, if that's the word, land wise, we were still on the Mediterranean, but the the culture of the people, the religion, and the way of being was very different. So yeah, we had even how you dress and how you relate was very different.
When you look back on those two mission points, Israel and then Cyprus, where do you look back and go, man, that was God working? Are there any specific anecdotes, any specific stories where you felt like, hey, this is totally God working?
In retro, we really learned. We went from we had a New York mentality where you go out and you invite everybody, to more of a family mentality, which is so fitting. I mean, even the church there now is so family oriented. It's so welcoming and warm, and everyone's in each other's life, and we're making food together, and that makes so much sense to our own personal like where we were at. And so I do see that God moved us into a more manageable way to live for the stage we were in life. I do see his protection. I do see his hand. Even though I cried and never wanted to have made that move, I see all throughout God's kindness to us, his gentleness to us, his protection, just giving the kids a beautiful childhood by the water and just like a lot of beautiful things.
Right, right.
For me, I see God throughout the whole thing from the moment we left to the moment we went back to visit after 19 years. We had, Karen wasn't able to get pregnant, believe it or not. Now we have 4 kids. But to your first question, how was that first couple of years in Israel? It was super devastating because we weren't fruitful as a church and we weren't fruitful as a married couple. We lost our first child and we thought, okay, wow, God, you brought us out here. We came out here with these high hopes. We gave up our lives. The church isn't doing well. We're not doing well. I mean, it was like a barren land on so many levels. And then to watch God work through such a challenging desert period and bring incredible wellspring later, and even use the book of Acts in the sense that we had a brother on the team who was a very, very wealthy man. And without us even asking, he said, hey, I heard you guys are having trouble having kids. Here, go see the best doctor in Israel in regards to fertility and give me the bill. And we did.
Wow.
Sure enough, I mean, I would hand him all these bills. He'd pay them. And then Karen got pregnant. And then
Wow.
Karen got pregnant again. And then had twins. And so even that just, we named our daughter, one of her middle names is the name of the wife of the brother who helped us. But I mean, that was so God to use. That has stayed with me forever. Almost 30 years later, he was an example to me of what you do with your money. Like, that was
Yeah.
amazing to me. He changed our lives with generosity. And then there's so many stories like that, being in Cyprus. So Israel was like that. I mean, even converting people, we did have a great period. We got to lead the church for about 3 or 4 years, and we went all out and we baptized like 17 people. And then there was a church planting in Tel Aviv of all these Russian disciples. The church grew from like 11 people to like over like 50 people. So we had this kind of
Wow.
moment, where we were going for it. And, a Muslim was baptized, a Jew was baptized. So it was very exciting.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it started off really slow, but it gained momentum over time. Just grit, determination, sticking with it really paid off. That's awesome. It's like that scripture says, and I was just reading it in Galatians. It says, don't grow weary because God will reward your faith. I'm just hacking it up here. What was it?
Yeah. Is it Hebrews or is it?
I'll throw this in too, Rob. So much people don't realize that if you just visit a team, like if you're an American and you just want to go and encourage a small church, that's what Eden's doing. That's what Revive does. But if you want to do that, it means so much to a little church. Like we would crave people visiting because they would bring fresh insights, a fresh spirit, oftentimes a fresh faith. So a lot of us being revived were the people that came later or came for a month or came for a year. And funny, they were often very fruitful because they were very faithful. And we've been beaten down and we're kind of cynical, and they're coming in fresh. And the same thing with like more mature couples. We really didn't have a lot of marriage counseling for 14 years, 13 years. It was whoever came through and gave us advice. So I want to encourage anyone out there who's a young disciple, don't underestimate your value. You shine much greater as a small fish in a big, you're a small fish in a big pond at home, but you're a big fish in a small pond on the mission field.
Right. Well, let's talk a little bit about your daughters. I've met two of your daughters. I haven't met one of your daughters or your son. They're pretty impressive. I mean, they're disciples, but they're more than disciples. I mean, these kids are fired up and strong. How did you pass that passion on? I mean, you most of the time there early on, you're in a small church, just like you mentioned, not a lot of resources, getting help from the odd person that comes into town. You were doing something. And what were the principles that you can point to that helped point your kids in the right direction?
I mean, I kind of think that moving as a family was very solidifying for us as a family unit. Even like having this little world in Cyprus where the children's ministry was them and their besties, and then coming and plucking down here in New Jersey, and they looked like they understood everything going on because they were speaking English. A little bit of British accent to it, but they were speaking English. But I knew culturally everything was going over their head, all the references, everything. So they always seemed to get on socially, but this family, we all understood. And I think we were I was deliberate because when we moved from Israel to Cyprus, I felt like life was a little disjointed. And so we made sure to bring back our stuff, whatever that means. It was a couch, it was a this, it was a that. But I wanted our world to be cohesive. And so that this story that we started over there, we're not just uprooting and starting a new story, but we're bringing it here. They still felt like in some way they were still in that world and we were all acclimating together. But I also think that in Cyprus, which was the majority of the girls' childhood, important years, elementary school years, they were a part of, they were missionaries. Like Eden was my partner, she would be strapped to me as a baby, sharing my faith. She was a magnet for people, even early, early on. So that was funny. Like I didn't have sisters, those were my sisters. That was my little mission team. And it wasn't like, where they're apart from the ministry. We were reaching out to families and they were reaching out to the kids. And so they were a part of all of that. And so I think that it just got passed in that way where, I think some ministers' children might be resentful of all the time it takes the family away from them. But they were a part of this. They were a good part of that. So that's what I think in looking back, because I don't even know that we intentionally we were surprised that they're all going toward, these professions and these directions. Because we didn't like try to put that in them. I think it's just they caught it.
I think there's a lot that could be said. I think that we could have, so everything she said, I agree with. And I want to add that coming back to New Jersey was us giving up our number one passion, which was being missionaries. And New Jersey, the minister and the elder guided me instead of being a sort of zealot, because I would have done anything. They could have said, hey guys, we want a Jewish ministry. Hey guys, go study, go preach at the mosque. And I was ready in that mind. But all they kept telling me was work on your marriage and be a great father. And we took all that passion and energy that we had as missionaries. It took a while for me to get it, but I realized that our new mission field was our family. And the truth, it was much more challenging than being a missionary in the Middle East. To be a great father and a great husband took way more than I had to use out there. And I feel like the kids were saved from us making the mission an idol, and they saw us change. They were old enough to see mom and dad become good enough parents. And we did that course, and that course changed our life.
Yeah, thank God for that course. Not for that course.
That's awesome. That's great. What are your plans going forward? You guys, I'm assuming your kids are out of the home now or close to it.
Have one.
Any plans to go back on the mission field or at least overseas missions? What do you see the next 10 years doing?
So in the moment, I just last year graduated and got my licenses as a mental health therapist and an art therapist. So that's my my new learning. We do still have a son who's at home finishing high school.
So I think, we talk about this and we always look at kind of the disciples we admire that are about 10 years ahead of us, and we watch their lives. We kind of watch how they do retirement, and we try to, that scripture, consider the outcome of their life and imitate their faith. So we pick the ones whose lives we feel good about, and we see what they are doing. And it's already happening. Most things are already happening, and then you realize it. But like last year, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, she went to visit Eden in Romania. So she was supporting Eden and went and had a blast in Romania. Last year, I went to visit Eden in Moldova. I was back in the game for like a week. It was amazing. Sheila is moving to England. I'm sure we're going to go there. So I think a lot of what we do is pivot and move. And then one of our other daughters may end up in another country with her husband. And we'll probably be that supporting cast, show up, help with the grandkids, give some wisdom to the younger Christians, kind of be that supportive couple that moves around wherever our kids are, is what it's looking like.
That's awesome. Final question. What advice would you give to a person who wants to make their life count?
Yeah, what I think is that we don't always realize the moment we're in. Like in the moment, especially when we first, were in our 20s and we didn't have children and we didn't have, I didn't realize what an opportune moment that was and how free I was. Like you're never going to be as free as you are now. And I guess that still pertains, right? I mean, there's always more to add on and more things to take care of, whether it's your home, your health, your kids, your family. So I say, seize the moment really of opportunity and really, really grab onto your faith and ask God to do great things. I'm challenged by that question. I gotta keep reinvesting. Like I was on this track to get educated and learn how to use art therapy to help people heal. And now I hit those milestones and I need a new prayer dream.
Awesome.
When you ask that question, the scripture comes to mind. Galatians 5:6, the second half. The only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love. So really that's it. Like have faith and express it through love. That's the only thing that counts. You could say, oh, I'm do this, do that, do this. We don't really know what the road holds. But if we have faith and we express it through love, we're making it count.
I think that's a great viewpoint to have. And it focuses more on the process than the goal. It's just like, okay, how am I going to be as a person no matter what comes up? Because you can't control what God brings into your life, whether it's good or bad, but you can always grow in your faith and express that love at all times. Thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And it's great getting to know you. You're very impressive in your background and with your family. So thank you for what you've done for God, and may God bless you going forward.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
And thank you for listening. Here's how you can help support the program. First, let your friends know about it. And secondly, go to robskinner.com and read my latest book, The 10X Christian. I just wrote that this past fall, and it's a great book on how to help you to bring Jesus back 10 times what he gave you. And it's based on the story of the 10 minas. And reading it, I was like, wow, I want to be that guy that brings Jesus back 10 times what he gave me. I want to multiply his gifts and his talents. And I would guess that if you're listening to this, you have that same desire. So go ahead and pick that up. You can get that on Amazon.com or on my website. Take a look at that, because my goal is to inspire you to live a no regrets life, to make this life count, and to multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. Have a great day and make this life count.